Welcome to today's webinar, The End of Working Poverty, Employer Strategies. The second event in our three-part webinar series on ending working poverty. My name is Paul Bourne and I'm the co-CEO of the Tamarack Institute and the founder and director of Vibrant Communities. I'm here to introduce our discussion today with Helmi, Ansari, and Alex Ralph. You're going to love them. I've really enjoyed getting to know them and the work that they're doing. I'm going to start with Helmi. Helmi, welcome here, first of all. Thanks for being on our webinar.
Thank you, Paul. It's my pleasure to be here.
Now, Helmi is the co-founder and chief sustainability and innovation officer at Grosh Coffee and Tea. You're going to love that place. Leading their efforts on sustainability and product innovation. He also is a member of the Better Way Alliance. I think you're one of the founders of the Better Way Alliance, aren't you?
One of the founding members, yes.
And it's an alliance made up of 20 small businesses that are working with nonprofits, championing decent work practices. I'm going to introduce Alex in a little while, but first I'm going to just talk to Helmi here about the interesting and exciting work that he's doing. Helmi, so first of all, how did you get involved in wanting to do more than make money? It seems like you've got a number of social enterprises going on the side here, and let's talk about that. And then I want to talk about you as a living wage employer, but let's just start with just yourself. How did you get interested in wanting to make a difference?
Sure, sounds good. I do have a few slides. If we can please put those up and give me control, I'll kind of navigate along with those. Thank you. So, Paul, I worked for 15, 18 years in large corporations, good companies with good people working there. But at the end of the day, it always baffled me how the only thing that business at large really cared about was making piles of money into bigger piles of money and making rich people into richer people and making the next, big jump on profit really was it at the end of the day. Well, by every means, I had a very successful corporate career. But in 2005, my wife and I, we have 3 daughters, and one of her daughters ended up falling ill. She traveled overseas and ended up getting cholera. Now, cholera, as you may know, is fatal in nearly half the instances that it when it attacks children. So our daughter ended up fainting and passing out lifeless in my wife's arms, and my wife was shaking her and she wouldn't come to, ran her into emergency. They tried to hydrate her, put needles in her body, and we were told her veins had already collapsed and they couldn't hydrate her. They rushed her into ICU, did an emergency head shave, and they said, look, the brain is the last thing that's protected. Let's see if we can hydrate her brain, keep her alive. Lucky for us, they hydrated her and they put a needle in her brain, and 3.5 days later she came to, and she's now a 13-year-old and healthy and well. And when that happened to us, we really began to reevaluate, working in corporations for just becoming wealthier and more successful, if that really would mean anything to us. I learned that 4,000 children die every single day from not having clean drinking water. And rather than trying to raise money for charity, we decided to start a business that would be built around raising money to help these people and these children get access to safe drinking water. So my wife and I started Grosh. So Grosh is a company that makes and sells coffee and tea wares and uses our profits to give safe drinking water to people in need. Every cup fills another is our mission statement. So as we fill our cup with coffee and tea, the profits from that company selling coffee and tea go towards providing people with access to safe drinking water and water purification. So what we do is we sell coffee wares, premium coffee, tea accessories, French presses, coffee makers. We sell teaware, like teapots and cups and mugs and glassware. We sell water bottles and hydration and infusers and things of that nature, things we would use anyway. And we use this business model to fund our safe water projects. Well, we install water filters like the blue canister that you see here, Paul. It's made out of cement, and it just has sand and concrete. It's Canadian technology, and it biologically purifies water to exceed WHO water standards. It removes cholera, listeria, viruses, worms, E. coli, turbidity, mud, and dirt, and can last up to 30 years with no cartridges to replace, no electricity, no chemicals, no moving parts. And it's locally made, so it actually creates employment for people wherever we install it. Rather than buying something in one country, a temporary filter, and donating it, and 30 days later that filter is useless, this is actually made locally, creates skills, creates employment, creates work for people. And that's a sustainable solution from what we find. So my wife and I, we travel around the world. This is my wife, myself, and our daughters in the Philippines. We were there a few months ago. I was actually in South Sudan, Paul. We were doing some work in an orphanage when a friend of mine asked me, he said, Helmi, you do all this work for, helping poor people in Africa and South Sudan, Uganda, and Malawi, India, Pakistan, Philippines. Have you thought about your own staff back home? And I said, what do you mean? He said, do you pay your staff a living wage? Well, at the time, wages, minimum wage, I think was 10 or 10.25 or something like that. And we were paying 12, 13. And I thought we were doing the right thing by paying more than a minimum wage. He said, no, you need to learn about a living wage and what it actually means for somebody to make a wage that they can live on. Because a minimum wage might have worked, when it was introduced, but no longer does it work. So I learned about it, and I went back and I looked at our mission statement that we had put for ourselves as a company. So our mission statement is to be a source of joy in the world. Well, what does that mean? It means, if you look on the top left, for your customers and consumers, give them a product that makes them happy. When it comes to company and culture on the top right, have the kind of company and culture that people feel good about working here. And then bottom right, grow sustainably and take care of our local society and our planet and our environment. So when I thought about company and culture, I said, if I'm paying my folks wages with which they cannot put food on the table, I'm really not being a good employer. And I'm saying that we care about the planet, I'm saying we care about the people, but it really isn't true, is it? So, we do volunteering work locally, but then we decided, look, if we need to be true to the fact that we're saying we're a good company and a good employer, we must pay our folks a living wage. There's no other way around it. It is the bare minimum that anyone should be doing if they actually care about your people. Paul, 20 or so years I worked in large corporations, mid-sized corporations, and we always talked about being a good corporate citizen and being a good local partner for our staff. But then when you ask the folks, hey, do you pay a living wage? They're like, well, we're not really sure we can do that. But, hey, we gave 1% to this charity and we gave 1% to this charity. And we had a marketing campaign that gave da-da-da-da-da. And to me, that just really wasn't enough. So for the last few years, my wife and I have been doing this full time, running Grosh International, being a living wage employer, and selling our products to raise money to give people access to safe drinking water. We opened a showroom 3 years ago in Guelph, which is our only retail store. It is the first living wage retail store in the city of Guelph. We are also the first multi-site living wage employer in the province of Ontario, which we were happy, but honestly really shocked that in this day and age, we, a small company, is the first living wage employer in the province of Ontario. I mean, it just didn't seem right. So that became part of the reason why we became part of this movement, and we're out there telling other people, look, you can do the right thing and you will be successful because you're doing the right thing. You don't become rich and successful and then decide, I'm going to give 1% to this charity or I'm going to do this. You don't have to be Bill Gates, make $120 billion and then say, I have more money than I need. Let me start giving it away. Well, our business model is you do the right thing all along. You pay people well, you treat them well, you have good quality products, and you use your profits to do the right thing. And that is why you're successful. People want to work with you, customers want to buy from you, and you become the kind of partner that these brands and other customers want to have. We became a benefit corporation, a B corporation, which many of you may know about. It's like being organic certified for your whole brand. So we're a B corporation. We've twice been given their Best for the World honor. And yeah, that's it. So that's Grosh. My wife and I started this from the laundry room of our house 10 years ago. Our first corporate office was 4 feet from the washer dryer. And the next corporate office was the whole basement, then the living room, then the main floor. And we've grown obviously a lot since then. We're in where we have half a dozen warehouses now across North America, and we're in thousands of retailers all over the place. So yeah, this is kind of our backstory and how living wage really fits into our sense of values and how we're trying to do the right thing by doing that.
That's lovely. What a great story, Helmi. I really love that, and I love your motto: "Every cup fills another." And you've sort of taken every angle here, and maybe in a sense, you've created such a brand through this, and it's really created a solid positive energy. But let's say I'm just an employer, right? I just wanna I like the idea of paying living wage. I'm not quite as energetic about saving the world as you are. What does it really mean to me? Like, let's say you're in Niagara. What does the living wage mean there?
At the end of the day, in Ontario now, minimum wage is $14 in a lot of different places an hour. A lot of different places, living wages, in the Cambridge area, 16, Guelph is 16.50. I think Toronto is 19 or 19.50. Based on the cost of living in each of these locations, that is the minimum that we need to pay our folks in terms of total compensation so that they can put food on their table, have basic sustainable housing, and be able to live a basic life. If we pay under that as total compensation, not to be confused with base wage, because you have base wage, you have benefits, you have allowances, you have healthcare, you have different things that we provide to our staff. Flexible working conditions, working times, scheduling, all of these things go into creating a good workplace. When we create this, we create an employment where people actually feel like they want to come to work. And when we create a business where people want to work, we take care of our staff take care of our customers. That creates, an environment where I don't have to worry about my customer being taken care of, because I know my staff, their heart's in the game. Their heart's in there, and they will treat their customer like we treat them. So A, you create this positive energy environment. B, we started this retail store when minimum wage around here, I think, was 11 at the time. And we were paying $16.50 living wage. We had people with master's degrees, and we still do, apply to work there for part-time or full-time positions. And I'm thinking, wow, somebody has a master's degree in biochemistry, and they're trying to make $16.50 in a retail store. All the managers of our competitors wanted to come work for us because their managers were making $12 at the time. So you can attract good talent at the same time that take care of your staff. And what we've proven is in the hardest business model, which is retail, we can actually pay a living wage in a retail store and be profitable at the end of the day. What if this tiny little company with one little retail store can prove that you can pay a living wage to your folks, and you start building customers and clienteles because people keep giving us these 5-star reviews like, oh my God, I love going there. The people are so friendly. They're so engaged. They're so knowledgeable.
Right.
That's how we grow. If I was crushing my staff and saying, I'm going to call you 10 minutes before shift and let you know your shift is canceled, or I'm going to force you to work on this day and Sunday and on this holiday and that holiday, and then, if I were to treat them badly, believe me, we would not have been successful.
Right. But there are companies that do treat employees differently than you do that are successful, right? So the bottom line here is understanding that, yes, there is a business case for this, but there's also a human case. And the sense is that $18 an hour in St. Catharines is really what it takes to live, at least a base life. And I think we want to start there and move out from there. It's $4 an hour more than the minimum wage. And many people are moving toward that kind of a model. Just quickly, before we move on to talking about Alexander, and I'll come back to you with more questions, talk to me about the Better Way Alliance and how that got started, and the fact that you now have 20 members.
So I think it's over 20. I think we might be up to 26 or 28 now.
Okay.
The Better Way Alliance was a coming together of like-minded people that not only think that having a living wage is important, but that there are many other things that go into being a better employer. Call it the employer of choice, an employer that people would want to go to and work with.
Right.
You're absolutely right. You can pay a minimum wage today and you still get tons of resumes. But when you pay a living wage or you create a work environment where you're giving fair scheduling to people, you're getting them advance notice of any changes in their work schedule, you're providing them with access to healthcare or benefits, flexible workplace, giving them paid time off when they're ill or if they have family emergencies. These are just basic things, but you create an environment where a lot of employers were doing this already, and they're thinking, wow, I must be alone. There's nobody else doing this kind of stuff. And the Better Way Alliance is a way for these people to come together and say, hey, you're not alone. You believe in the same thing that we do.
Nice.
And look at what we
Nice.
can do together. Let's tell everybody else about it. We have people from manufacturing, from service sector, from product sector, all across consulting, retail, all over the board that are saying, look, you can do this. And we just want to be an example. We want to be a sounding board for people who have questions, who are curious about this, curious about the benefits, about the cost, and we're happy to share kind of our experience and help people find their own journey in becoming, the employer that they would aspire to be. We weren't perfect. We weren't paying the living wage always, Paul. We were, we thought we were great paying $12.50 when minimum wage was 10. But we've learned a lot since then. I wish I had a Better Way Alliance back in 5 years ago when we first started on this journey.
And is it open to anyone, any employer? The Better Way Alliance is open to any employer. Is it public, private? Doesn't matter. Anyone that wants to have this kind of impact can join.
Absolutely. And it's
what's the best way to get a hold of you, Helmi, for the Better Way Alliance?
For the Better Way Alliance, just visit our website, go to betterwayalliance.ca, and you'll just go there, initiate contact, and then we can get in touch with you. And if you have questions, have you get in touch with other employers who are doing, similar stuff, be a sounding board and help you figure out how to implement some of these practices in your workplace. And step by step, baby steps, walk in that direction. You don't have to swallow the elephant, so to speak, in one bite. It's making little changes that have a big impact. So, and we're here to share and help and offer our insights and experience in any way we can.
That's fantastic. We'll look forward to that. You said betterwayalliance.ca.
That's right.
Wonderful. We'll get that up later on, and we'll keep sharing it. Helmi, we're going to come back to you, but right now we're going to move over to Alexander and introduce him and the amazing work that they are doing and that he's been involved in at the City of Vancouver. Hi, Alexander. Welcome to this call.
Thank you, Paul. Appreciate it.
So you are what they say here in the bio they gave me about you. You're a supply chain management professional. It's a big title with 20 years experience working with organizations, both the private and public sector in North America, helping them to improve their operations and business processes. But you're currently acting director, and this is really important, and chief procurement officer for the City of Vancouver. By the way, one of my favorite cities in the entire world to go and visit. I used to live quite close to there. And you've played a key role in the municipality's social procurement strategy and new living wage designation. Like, that's pretty amazing. I didn't actually know until I talked to you last week, as we were getting ready for this, that the City of Vancouver did adopt a living wage designation, which is kind of different than what Helmi's talking about, because it's a bigger policy issue for you. But Alexander, talk to me about both the social procurement process that you undertook and also this living wage designation and how it has impacted employees at the City of Vancouver.
For sure, Paul. I'll tell you a little bit about our story and how we were able to get the living wage certification and a little bit of the lessons learned that we've had along the journey. So, well, first of all, just hearing Helmi's just story as well, very inspiring, and obviously just a different environment. He was talking about working many years in the corporate side and not being able to just really impact the day-to-day of people. Just in the case of the City of Vancouver, we are a large organization. We are the largest municipality in Canada that has adopted and been certified in living wage. And we truly think that we can make a difference as well, even on the corporate side. So our journey started back in 2015 when our council at that time decided that they wanted to explore and see what would be the implications of actually becoming a living wage employer. So they went back to staff and asked to do some research and come back as soon as possible to be able to inform back to council. So in September of 2016, staff went back to council and told them that just the steps to be able to become a living wage employer. At that point, we had engaged not only the Living Wage for Families campaign, that's the actually certifying body, but as well, we reached out to other organizations that had actually implemented and certified their living wage programs. An example of that is Van City Credit Union here in Vancouver, or as well New West, a municipality here in BC as well that has actually and we were the first ones to be able to implement the living wage. So we reached out and tried to learn a little bit about their experience, and this was very useful for us. And then we reported back to council and told them that we needed resources to be able to go back and implement. When I say resources, it was not only people, so we put together a multidisciplinary team to be able to just implement the program. But as well, we needed to make sure that all of our contracts as well were incorporated as part of the living wage, and that our vendors were paying their employees and their subcontractors as well a living wage. So to be able to do that, we had to invest and we had to really understand which would be the contracts that would be impacted. So as part of our research, we determined as well that it was important, and this was a lesson learned that we learned from Van City Credit Union, that they told us, and similar to what Helmi was describing, you do not need to just save the world at once. You need to do it gradually, and you need to just make sure that you have small steps towards your actual implementation. So we decided for a limited scope in our program. Obviously, we're focusing on services, and we're focusing on services for contracts that are over $250,000. The city has, yes,
Alex, I'm going to get you to come. I'm going to go there with you in a moment. I want to just go a little bit back to the living wage,
sure,
before we go to social procurement. So, how many employees, first of all, at the city of Vancouver, approximately?
So the city of Vancouver has 10,000 employees.
Okay, and how many were then affected by this living wage, and who were they primarily?
Right. So as part of the research that staff did at that point, we realized that we were already paying a living wage to all of our direct employees. So therefore, the real effort was to be able to engage our vendors and our subcontractors.
And how did that go over?
Right. So we identified, as I was mentioning, as part of this scope that I was describing, 120 contracts that would be actually impacted. We decided that we were not going to open up all of our contracts, that we were going to grandfather our contracts that were already established. And at the time that we were actually either extending them or renewing them, at that point, we would bring them back into a living wage.
Okay. And how long do you think that'll take? Is it like a 5-year process?
That is correct. So we estimate that probably within the 6 or 7 future years, we will be able to bring back all of those 120 contracts. Nevertheless, we have focused in 4 specific contracts, which we call them vulnerable sectors. So we identified janitorial services, our graffiti removal services, and our security services as being industries that were typically not paying a living wage. They typically pay a minimum wage, and therefore we decided to focus our first efforts on these specific sectors. And there were 4 specific contracts that we targeted first.
Right. And how many employees did that impact?
Right. So as part of this multidisciplinary team that we had, we included people from well, not only supply chain management, obviously, because we have the relationship with our vendors, but we had to include our just the legal team. And the reason why is because we needed to change our policies. We needed to change all of our contractual agreements to be able to ask that our vendors are paying a living wage. And as well, since we are a public organization and do public procurement, we needed to change all of our templates, our requests for proposals and requests for information template to be able to actually just ask in a different way just for proposals from vendors and assure that they, when they're reaching out and bidding on our projects, to make sure that we ask the questions regarding living wage. So,
exactly.
So it took us.
So all the technical things, but Alex, what about the actual dollars and cents? What's the living wage in Vancouver?
That's correct. So currently, the living wage in Vancouver, in the Metro Vancouver area, it's $20.91.
Okay, that's a substantial jump from the minimum wage. That's almost $7, huh?
That is correct. Obviously, Vancouver, as many other large cities in Canada, are facing a large affordability issue. So therefore, $20.91 just seems a lot, but it's just to be able to just make sure that a family of four is able to cover the basic needs.
It's a tremendous commitment on your part. Just quickly now, Alex, before we go into a conversation with both you and Helmi, just a quick overview of your social procurement. First of all, what is social procurement? Some people don't know, and why is it important?
Right. So all of these initiatives come from our Healthy City strategy. And the main goal of our Healthy City strategy is to be able to make sure that we help our communities, our families, and individuals in the community to be able to just make needs end. So therefore, just two very specific objectives of our Healthy City strategy are first, that the city became a living wage employer, but second, that the city developed a social procurement framework that helped to be able to use procurement as a mechanism to be able to just as well help our communities. So we're using procurement to be able to stretch the dollar, if you will, and if we're going to be spending $1 in our procurements to be able to provide services to the citizens of Vancouver, therefore we can use that dollar as well and to be able to inject that investment into just either small businesses or just diverse businesses within our communities, and be able to as well help them grow and develop and to be able to be prepared to be able to offer just greater scope in terms of services. So that's very important for us. And we in the supply chain department just take it as a leadership opportunity to be able to make sure that that we're able as well to impact our communities through the spend dollar amounts that we use. That's
great. Alex, maybe if you could come back on camera, and Helmi, if you could come back on camera as well. Good work there. Thanks. Alex, I don't know if your camera just went, it's off, huh?
And I'll try it once again.
Yeah. Let's see if it goes on. If not, it's okay. We'll keep going. Okay, as you try to get your camera to work, it's okay. Don't worry if it doesn't come on. We can still keep talking. And I want to just, those of you who are on the call, do type in your questions in the chat box that's open in front of you. Natasha will be monitoring that. Send your questions to Natasha and she'll send them in to us. Let us know also which city you're from, because that's always helpful for us to kind of know where the question's coming from. So Alex and Helmi, like, why, first of all, is ending working poverty? And Helmi, you did a really good job explaining that working poverty is not just about money. It is about working conditions. And I'm sure, Alexander, you don't disagree with that for a moment. We want a better quality of life generally for all employees. But how is this going to change the way that we look at the role of employment in society, and how is it going to make Canada a better place?
Great question. when people come to our store and they buy a cup of coffee or a cup of tea and they're like, where's your tip jar? Because we'd like to leave a tip. Our staff members say, well, you don't have to tip us because we make a living wage. And that opens up into a conversation around, really? What's the living wage? Well, it means that an
Nice.
employer believes that they're responsible for making sure if we work for them, we're not part of the working poor. Poverty for people who are employed is something that many people don't understand. People feel that, oh, if you don't have a job or if you don't get hours or if you're unemployed, you're poor. But the fact is that almost, you can probably correct the number for this for me, but probably almost 15 to 20% of people that are working full-time hours are living in poverty. And we don't understand that. And what that means is that these people aren't able to go out and buy products at the convenience store. They're not part of the active economy because they're barely making ends meet. And as a business person, I think, well, that's an opportunity. If these people get enough money to be able to put food on the table, they're the ones who go to the corner store. They're the ones who go and buy something from, from the mall or buy clothes and stuff because they're the ones who are in need the most. If you take a wealthy person that's making X number of dollars or is way above the poverty line, they make more money. It just sits in the bank. In most cases, or it goes into an investment portfolio. Now, if the country needs to make progress, we have to put money where it's going to work for the country, where that money will go into these people's pockets. They will spend it. They will buy things. They'll buy clothes for their kids. They're going to buy shoes. They're going to buy supplies. They're going to buy food. They're going to buy groceries. And the money starts working in the economy. So from a pure economic perspective, it makes more sense to me to be able to help people that are in the poverty area, working poor, that aren't part of the economy, that honestly, most people don't even understand that these people exist. They think, oh, you have a job, you must be fine. They don't realize that they're in poverty. Paul, I visited one of my staff members' homes when I used to pay $12.50 or so. And when I saw how she lived, and she was a single parent with 2 young children, I didn't feel good about myself because as her employer, as somebody who thought I cared about this person because they work with us, I realized that this person wasn't able to put food on their table and take care of her kids, and I knew something had to change. So it was around that time that I learned about the living wage movement, and we decided to become a living wage employer. And she got roughly a 30% boost in terms of her pay, and it didn't solve all of her problems. She didn't start living luxury, but she was better off than she was before. And I slept a little better at night, knowing that her kids had food. And, I hope that answered your question.
No, it's a really good point, Helmi. And, in a sense, you can say, I mean, it's like you and Henry Ford. I remember, when he was mass producing cars, he just said, I have to start paying people enough money so they can actually buy one of these, right?
Yeah.
Good. Our co-founder, Alan Broadbent of the Maitrey and the Havana Capital Corporation, wrote an op-ed piece not too long ago in the Toronto Star saying that if you want to stimulate the economy, let's give the money to the poor because they will pay it, they will buy it, they will spend it directly. Of course, I mean, there's all the social benefits as well. And Alexander, I think you talked about that a little bit, that this strategy actually came out of your Healthy Cities strategy.
That is correct, Paul. Yes. And at the city, we see it more of a leadership position. So as I was describing, we were already paying our employees living wage, but nevertheless, we do see the responsibility just to be able to talk about it and to be able to inform other organizations, and as well to be able to use our buying power to be able to try to influence, for example, our partners or our vendors to be able to make sure that they consider a living wage as well. And it's been very satisfying over the last few years because we have actually just received letters or our vendors have approached and said, you know what, just paying a living wage and has really benefited my business. So there's a whole business case around it because there's stability in terms of employment, and they can reinvest some of that money as well to be able to just do some training, etc. And then, as Helmi was describing, the customer service, and actually what we're getting back in terms of services has increased as well. So that's very rewarding. And as well, we've been talking
That's
to
excellent.
just other municipalities and other organizations to just share our experience and to be able to let them know what we have learned as part of this journey, so that they do not need to start from scratch.
That's great, Alexander. And we've got a question here. Questions are starting to come in very quickly here. A question for you, Alexander, and we've got one for you, Helmi, coming next here. Alexander, there are several municipalities in Ontario. This is a question from Greg. There are several municipalities in Ontario looking at becoming living wage employers. What suggestions would you have for them in how to best implement living wage?
Right. So I think one of the lessons learned that we had was that we needed to move quickly, but we decided to have a project manager that helped us with the implementation of this process. So that was very helpful because obviously in all municipalities there's competing priorities and emerging priorities that we need to deal on a day-to-day basis to be able to run a city. And therefore, we dedicated resources to be able to focus specifically on the project. So that was very important as well. Sponsorship was one of the things that was very important. So our deputy city manager was the executive sponsor of the program, and that helped a lot because in terms of messaging and in terms of prioritizing, just the city knew that we were trying to move quickly to be able to get the certification, and as well, we had to deal with a lot of our business units, and they were the ones that were helping us as well to be able to prioritize living wage. So that was very, very important lessons learned. The other is reach out to others that have done it in the past. So in our case, Van City and the municipality of New Westminster were key players. And as well, we worked in conjunction with the Living Wage for Families campaign. We had a lot of questions, and they were very graceful and very patient, and they explained, and they held our hand during the whole process. So that was important as well.
It's good, and I think it's I think every municipality in Canada needs to take note of this and become a living wage employer. It's I've often said, if you work, you should not be poor, and when we mean not be poor, that means having a good job. It's just not right. It's a belief that every Canadian, I actually think, has, and you're both proving to us it's possible. Helmi, we've got a great question here from Mecca. If we want to recruit employers to sign on as living wage employers, what would you recommend our approach be? Does it need to come from other employers? Do we focus on the business case, the social case, or both? What's been your experience here, Helmi?
Business at the end of the day have to deliver a certain profitability agenda. That's why they exist, and that's how they're successful. What we and other businesses that are part of the Better Way Alliance or that are living wage employers are proving is that you can be more successful if you're a good employer than if you were in the churn and burn kind of an environment, with all the benefits that come from the stability and the engagement of having engaged employees. I think if we are an organization that is trying to recruit more people, more employers, we have to make all the different employers who are Better Way Alliance or living wage employers into the kind of test cases or heroes or business cases to say, look, here's a way you can be more successful. You'll be better off. You'll be a better working environment. You'll be happier working there. Your people will be happier working for you, and you'll be more profitable. Plus. Talk to these people. Let's celebrate the winners. Let's celebrate the people who are doing a good job. Make heroes out of them. So the other people who aren't there yet are inspired to ask the question, wow, these guys, wow, they're doing so great, and I want to be like them. These are the cool kids. Look what the cool kids are doing. The cool kids are paying a living wage, and they're doing this, and they're high-fiving each other. It looks like they're having fun. my life is pretty miserable. I'm having a tough time and I can't retain people, and my staff they're just mean to our customers. How do I turn that around? Well, this is one of the ways you can do that. And look at what the cool kids are doing. Celebrate it, have fun, make it positive, be positive energy, and show that this is not a hard thing to go do. But once you're down this path and you walk this path and you get there step by step by step, it becomes a really great place to work. And whether you're management or the owner or the staff member, you'd much rather work in a company like this because they're profitable, they're successful, they do well. Why not? This is what the cool kids are doing. Come on, join us.
Right.
I like the fun approach.
That's an excellent answer. By the way, that was Monique from Peterborough, not Monica.
Thank you, Monique.
Let's go to. We've got a couple of other questions that have come by. This one is kind of an interesting one, and it's maybe technical. And let's work at this one. It's a tough question. It says, Paul, the government of Ontario cut the basic income project. Interesting. Alexander, it sounds like the government of British Columbia is looking at it now for the first time, or maybe not for the first time, but seriously, before it could be assessed for value. So we know that story. Do you see all the government benefits being done through someone completing their income tax? It's kind of interesting. I guess the question they're coming down to here is, how does basic income compare to living wage in terms of benefit to society? You guys, either of you given this any thought? You're both working at living wage in different kinds of ways. What's your take on basic income versus living wage? Are they competitors in terms of doing social good? Can they live side by side? Your thoughts?
The living wage model, as Alex mentioned, is built for a family, of 4, 2 parents, 2 kids, living in a certain basic lifestyle and employed 40 hours a week.
Right.
Both parents working 40 hours a week. Well, I know for a fact that in a lot of places that people don't get 40 hours a week for both a couple. Sometimes people have more than 2 kids. And sometimes expenses come at us that are hard to manage. So even a living wage, I can tell you in a lot of cases, that isn't enough. And I think there is place for something like the basic income to still be there as an emergency, as a supplement, as help, and for these kind of assistance programs, if I want to bucket it, to be there as a safety net, because you may not be able to work full time. You may not be able to get the hours that you want. Maybe both people don't make a living wage. So from what I've seen of the basic income pilot, I think it made a lot of sense. And I think there is a need for it. And I think in terms of employment, there is the living wage, I think, should be a bare minimum. It is not the end of it. It's a starting point. So I think the living wage is, as a minimum, as a floor, needs to exist. This has to be the floor. Anything that is needed above that, emergency assistance, basic income, all of that needs to be there as extra. Because a living wage, when you get there, you can't check the box and say, hey, we're done. This needs to be the bare minimum that we're talking about here.
And I would agree with Helmi as well. I don't think that they're competing. I think it's just another tool to be able to make sure that families have the time to be able to spend them with their children, and living wage is just one of those tools, right? But we need to attack the problem of affordability and problems of housing and problems of providing health, in different angles and different perspectives, right? So I would agree that this is just one tool, and basic income would be another one.
Yeah, it's a really interesting question. I tend to agree with both of you. I think that there is maybe, for me, it's kind of like, I want people to work. I don't know. I grew up feeling great about work. And I worked on a farm for many years, on the family farm, and I just get a sense that when people are contributing, they're happier. But employers are saying we can't take the entire burden. The social burden cannot just be put on employers. And there's a big argument now that there isn't going to be enough employment. I'm not sure that's true. I think a lot of the traditional employment, there isn't going to be a lot, but there's a lot of employment around even just restoring our environment, taking care of our communities, taking care of our seniors. There's lots of good work out there that needs to be done, right? And so my sense is that we're going to need a basic income in order to share the cost and to increase the quality of life. The more we can increase the quality of life, and Helmi, as you talk about the bare minimum, that's an important way of looking at it, that the living wage is a bare minimum, or maybe the basic income is the bare minimum, and a living wage can even enhance that and help people move forward. Because I think that's always the argument on the other side. Are we going to take incentive away from people to get ahead? And it's kind of what drives the economy. And whether you think that's right or wrong isn't really the point. The point is that we've used this in terms of how we have created actually a very good quality of life here in Canada. I like both tools very much because I want to eliminate poverty.
Yeah, Paul, I think business cannot shirk our responsibility and say,
I think that the living wage, the basic income. Go ahead.
Sorry, you cut out there. I thought you had stopped, but I didn't realize you were speaking. But I think,
go ahead. I'm okay.
Whatever minimum wage does, I think whatever happens with the basic income pilot in different places, I think as a business person, I cannot shirk my responsibility to make sure my people are not being forced to live in poverty to be able to sustain my business model. If my business model requires my people to be living in poverty, I need to step back and ask myself, what's wrong with my business model? That it as a foundation requires people to be in poverty.
And maybe we should ask as Canadians, can we afford business models that keep people in poverty? It's a really important question to ask because we are subsidizing those businesses. And frankly, I'd rather subsidize it with basic income than through poor working conditions. Yes, we've got another question for you, Alex. They're just curious. Did you get pushback from your vendors? It sounds like you were telling that story in a way that some of your vendors were actually coming forward and saying, we love this.
Yeah, so for us, it's very important. Another key success factors was communication. So we needed to really explain what a living wage meant, and we had a lot of questions, for example, from just vendors that needed to understand how a living wage calculation is done, right? So Helmi was talking about that it's not only the direct payment, but it's as well additional benefits and things that help you to be able to make meets end, right? So in that sense, we had to do a lot of education, and we had to just communicate with our vendors and let them know what actually how to calculate the living wage. Now as well, who's actually paying for that differential is the city. So when we are extending a contract or renewing a contract, we sit down and negotiate, and we sit down and and at the end we allow rate increases to be able to bring those contracts into a living wage standard, right? So obviously our vendors are happy because, yeah, sure, they will get the dollar amounts from our contracts to be able to pay a living wage to their employees, and they will ask their subcontractors as well to be able to pay a living wage, and those is just a transfer back to the city of Vancouver. So who's actually making the investment is the city of Vancouver. Now that said, as I was mentioning, the money that they could devote to other things, they will have been investing them in training, or as well, there has been just very clear statistics in terms of that the number of sick days for those service providers are just, for example, decreases drastically because their employees do not need to go and have 2 or 3 jobs. They can focus on just one job, and they can do things, as I was mentioning, with their families during the weekends, etc. And that has been very beneficial as well, right? So we see it as a win-win-win situation. And definitely, sure, it is an investment, but at the end, we're using, for example, our procurement or our supply chain to be able to invest back into the communities, right? As being a public organization as well, we do that through grants, but procurement is another way that we use to be able to just make sure that we are increasing the well-being and injecting money into the economy.
That's very good. You know, I was speaking with Chief Medical Officer of Health, who told me that his belief was that the #1 cost of healthcare is actually poverty.
Yep.
So, you know, we understand that it's good for society. And if you can work this way, if every municipality would be as progressive as yours in Vancouver, you'd start to set the tone. And I like that. At Helmi, it sounds like we got to not have you just at 27 or 28 members. You need to be 2,700, 2,800 members in Canada. And betterwayalliance.ca. We're looking for the growth there as well. And to both of you, thank you for your work, for your inspiration, for what you're doing for society. You're paving a new way. And let's hopefully at one point we'll be able to say that neither of you are innovative. It's just the way it is now. Everyone's paying a living wage. We're paying great wages, and all the municipalities have agreed.